All right, let's do some reality check here. Are Teslas the only car still that you can take on the road trip? Just basically drive them long distance and not having to worry about the fast charging stations. I remember when I was getting my 2012 Tesla in the very beginning, and I told my friends how amazing this car was, all its features, and their first question was always like, yeah, but can you drive to LA? And I always thought it was kind of odd because, most people don't take road trips that often. When they do, it's not in their $100,000 luxury sedan. But at that time, Tesla already built the superchargers to go from San Francisco Bay Area to LA. So the answer was yes. But 5, 6 years later, the same question people ask about other cars because now there are other electric cars that are on the market, especially this year with over 200-mile range, and the question stayed the same. Now it's funny because one of the Tesla Model S configurations can actually drive all the way to Los Angeles from the same San Francisco Bay Area without charging at all. Now, I think it's pretty cool, but most of the time, depending on your driving habits, temperature, weather, wind, and all of that stuff, you'll probably have to stop at least once, even in that car. Now, why is it so important to people? I still can't figure out. Maybe you guys put it in the comments of this section, but I decided we should probably tackle this issue and see where is the rest of the fast charging networks. There is one in the US that's been growing, Electrify America. Of course, we also have a EVgo, a smaller fast charging network. And in Europe, it's Ionity. Both of them have been growing. I was under the impression they're kind of almost going to be there by the end of the year. But if you watch the previous episode of Plugged In with Tom Moloughney, which we're doing today, you would know that we got in a little bit of, a debate there, and that wasn't the topic, so we kind of decided to go back on topic. But today is the day where we can talk about it because Tom has been driving his Tesla for a while now, and so now he has a full experience of fast charging network all across United States. So he's going to be here in a few minutes. It's our scheduled day to do that. So let's get going with that right now. Taking over the world, electrifying the world, E4 Electric. Welcome to E4 Electric, your number one source of unbiased electric car news. If this is your first time here, go ahead and click on that subscribe button down there so you don't miss anything moving forward. Just like I said, today we're doing Plugged In with Tom Moloughney. Thank you so much for watching it. This is pretty much one of the most watched in terms of watch minutes segment that's now on this channel. I enjoy having Tom here, and today he's once again a perfect guest for this topic. Well, mainly because he picked the topic, but I mean he is the charging, the electric car charging expert. As you know, when he does these segments from his garage, you can see his humongous test wall of all kinds of chargers. But now that he has experience with Tesla superchargers, and of course already Electrify America, EVgo, and ChargePoint and others, he pretty much is probably also the top expert in fast charging networks in the United States. I don't have as much of a experience with Electrify America, so definitely his opinion will beat mine. But nevertheless, there are a couple of questions I have for him, so he'll be here in a minute to answer that. Before that, of course, a quick reminder that this video and this channel is sponsored by Byte, and check out their all-electric SUV called M-Byte coming to the US and Europe. Also going to be able to fast charge. Join myself and over 50,000 other people who have reserved this car. Takes $0 to reserve, about a minute of your time or so. And go to the description of this video to reserve your Byte today. All right, so without further ado, let me bring in Tom, and he'll tell us all about this. Tom, how are you doing, my friend?
Alex, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. It's going pretty good. Well, once again, we're here, and we kind of picked the topic accidentally, I guess, last week when we got into it a little bit. But, you are much better versed, especially with Electrify America, EVgo, and so forth. Okay, so what is your opinion on this? Are Teslas the only cars that you can drive around the US and Europe, let's say? We'll add Europe to the question, where you don't have to worry about fast charging? Or do you think it's safe to buy an electric car nowadays with CCS port, and the Electrify America, Ionity, and so forth will catch up to that?
Well, I could say it's definitely getting better for the non-Tesla brands. As we've talked about in previous segments, I've been driving electric cars now for over 10 years. So I've kind of been out there from the days when there were no public charging stations to when they started installing some level 2 charging stations. And then we started getting a few DC fast charge stations, and now they're kind of popping up all over the place. And the one thing over the years that Tesla had, I mean, Tesla had quite a few advantages, but the thing that Tesla could really just boast about was the fact that you could drive wherever you want in a Tesla. Between the fact that they had the range, 200-mile plus, and they had supercharger locations, they were really the only electric car brand that you could feel comfortable with going on long distance. It's not to say that other people didn't take road trips. I took road trips in my EVs that could go less than 100 miles. I did 300, 400, 500-mile road trips. It's not that you can't do it, but can you do it conveniently without having to stop for many, many hours to charge? And that's one of the things that Tesla had as an advantage over everybody. So as you mentioned, now that we've got some of these other cars coming on the market that can do 200 plus miles of range, that solves 50% of the equation. And then the other side is, are there charging stations? Here in the US, ChargePoint's the largest charging network out there, but they don't have a lot of DC fast chargers. Most of their chargers, public chargers, are level 2, which doesn't really help a whole lot for road trips. You need something that can charge at the minimum of 50 kilowatts. And so EVgo really has been the main DC fast charge network in the US. They have had the most DC fast charge stations for the past few years. But now the 800-pound gorilla is in the room, and that's Electrify America. And they're really coming on strongly. And they have said that by the end of this year, they're going to have 484 sites live in the US with over 2,000 DC fast charge stations, and which is pretty good. But putting that in perspective, Tesla by the end of the year should have, I think, around 800 sites, which is a little less than double, and somewhere around 7,000, I want to say, maybe your readers can correct me, actual stalls. So they still will have more than 3 times as many stalls as Electrify America, even if they have less than half the locations. Less than double the locations. And that's because Tesla has been installing 8 to 10 charging stations per location, and Electrify America is coming in at around 4 to 5.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. So that's absolutely, in terms of numbers, Tesla beats Electrify America here in the US and Ionity in Europe. But there are many, I think, what, 500,000 right now, Teslas out on the road, where there are very few CCS compatible electric cars that could be charging at Electrify America. So the ratio between the cars that are capable of charging are much more friendly, at least right now, in Electrify America case rather than Tesla's case. But there's another problem you say Electrify America has that Tesla has solved from the very beginning.
Yeah, so yes, you're correct. Numbers wise, there's a lot fewer CCS compatible and CHAdeMO cars that will be able to DC fast charge than Teslas. So, with having less charging stations but a lot less cars, that kind of balances it out. And the fact that Electrify America is installing these charging stations at a ridiculous speed. We're talking about Tesla's been putting in these superchargers now since, I'm not sure when was it, you might know, 2013-ish?
Yeah, exactly.
When did they start installing the superchargers?
Yeah, early 2013, I believe I was already able to use the supercharger. So
figure a solid 6 years plus, and they have about 750 stations to date right now, sites, not stations, in the US. And I know they're installing them worldwide, but we really need to drill down on US because that's what I'm comparing with Electrify America. So they have about 750 sites after 6 years. Electrify America started installing their sites last year. It's only been about 14 months now. and the rate that they're installing them at right now is unparalleled. They're exceeding Tesla's the installation rate, and they're going to even ramp up after this year. So Electrify America is really doing a good job with that. Now, where they're not doing a great job is with the reliability. We're a lot of the stations, we're getting a lot of complaints over at InsideEVs, a lot of people on our forums complaining that the cars they can't initiate a charge, or the credit card reader doesn't work. And I can verify that the two times that I've used Electrify America charging stations, and there's my i3 charging at the first Tesla Electrify America station in New Jersey. It just opened up last week in Bridgewater at the Target. Both times I've used Electrify America so far, I had issues. I couldn't initially, when I plugged in, the credit card reader wouldn't work. And then in the middle of a charging session, only 10 minutes in, the station just shut off, and I had to initiate another charging session. So they're having problems with the software. Now, I've been in touch with Electrify America, and they know the problems that they have, and they claim that they're working on them and that they're going to have these resolved relatively shortly. In particular, the units from BTC Power are ones that seem to be having a problem with shutting off mid charging session and reinitializing. It just so happens the two stations that I used were BTC Power stations. So, was it bad luck on my end? Sure, but you know what? When you're driving an electric car and you're trying to get charged up and you're on a road trip, it doesn't really matter who made the charging station. It doesn't matter who made the credit card reader. The only thing that matters is that you pull in, you plug in, and you charge up. And you don't want to deal with anything. And I tell you, I've had my Model 3 now for 2 months, and there's nothing right now like supercharging. They're really none of the networks are so easy where you just back in, you plug your car in, you don't even have to look at the station. You know it's gonna work. You just plug it in and you walk away. EVgo stations have been pretty reliable. The ones that I've used, I really can't fault them. But still, you get out, you get your card, you swipe your card, you plug the car in, then you watch the screen to make sure it turns on. With the Tesla superchargers, they just work. And, that's a great feeling, and it's a great advantage. Not saying the other manufacturers won't get there. Like Electrify America is working very hard. They've, as I mentioned before, that they're only been installing these for a little over a year now. So there's going to be some glitches early on. And one of the problems that Electrify America has that Tesla doesn't have is the fact that they have to make their stations compatible with cars from all different manufacturers. And while that seems like it should be simple, it's not, because all the manufacturers interpret the protocols differently, like the J1772 protocol or the CCS protocol. Each manufacturer seems to slightly modify how they interpret that code, and that wreaks havoc on the charging stations. So what Tesla has is they make their cars and they make the charging stations. It's very simple for them to be certain that the car, when you plug it in, it's going to work, because it's all in-house. Whereas with Electrify America, every time a new EV comes out, they've got to get the cars and immediately start testing them to make sure that there's no bugs or no incompatibility issues. When I had the press loan from Kia, my Niro, and I drove to an Electrify America station, and I had some initialization problems, the person that I spoke to at Electrify America was almost surprised that I had the car, because they weren't out on the market yet. And, was like, yeah, we're having some difficulties with the handshake with Kia. So, I mean, that just goes to show you the problems that Electrify America and some of the other charging network companies are going to have that Tesla will never have, because they make the cars and they make the chargers. There'll never be a compatibility problem with Tesla.
I do have to say that, throughout what 5, 6 years that I owned my three Teslas, never a single even tiny little glitch. And when I did I wasn't using Electrify America stations, but I have this one report that I did here in Livermore, California. And as I was doing the report, there were 2 or 3 other people trying to figure it out and couldn't figure out how to pay, and having those technical difficulties that you mentioned. Now let's talk about something else that the people do care about. And so we know that a lot of Teslas were made, in the early days. They have free supercharging for life, and they're still on the road. Once in a while, Tesla does have a promotion where it's free supercharging for the first owner, or 1,000 first miles or whatever. And overall, Tesla rates still, after they raise them, are still pretty low. Where Electrify America, for example, those rates are up there. So what is your estimation as far as just how much money you would be spending, even in the worst case scenario, if you have a Tesla, like I believe you have to pay no matter what, versus Electrify America? And does it really matter if people take only maybe a couple of trips a year?
Yeah, so for the person that makes a couple trips a year, no, it doesn't matter. You could pay a lot more than what they're charging now on either network, and it really wouldn't matter because you're just paying for the convenience part of it. But for those people that say live in an apartment and they are going to rely on public charging infrastructure, for those people it does matter. And I think that company like Tesla has to look at that in the future and consider how they're going to address that. Because, to me right now, I think the superchargers are a little bit less expensive than they should be. I don't think there's any much of an incentive for people to not use them. And by that, I mean like a person like myself who really almost never needs to supercharge. I can charge at home 99% of the time unless I'm going on a really far trip. So for me, if I'm paying nearly the same for a supercharger as I am at home, there's no incentive for me to not use a supercharger and clog up a supercharger and take up a stall from somebody else that really needs it. So I think there needs to be have to figure something out. Maybe when you buy a car, you can buy a package that includes less expensive supercharging. That's for people that maybe know that they're going to need to use superchargers to rely on them weekly to charge their car. But somebody like me who charges at home won't pay for that extra option. So that'll give me a less of an incentive to use the supercharging, because then I'll pay more at a station than somebody who maybe bought this supercharger package, let's say. Because as it is right now, honestly, I think Tesla should be charging more. I think that they're losing money in a lot of the stations with the demand charges. They must be paying ridiculous demand charges for the superchargers, and they're basically charging what the electricity costs in that area, maybe a little bit more. And I know earlier this year they announced price increases, which to me looked perfectly reasonable, but there was a huge backlash, and then they kind of pulled back on that and then canceled those planned increases. I think they need to reinstate that. I think that they need to raise the prices and get some more additional revenue. The supercharger network must be costing Tesla a tremendous amount of money right now, and it's unsustainable.
And the weird part, sorry to interrupt, maybe you can
sure.
chime in on that, is the weird part. They're not even using their own battery pack technology, where if they would install those, it would decrease those rates. As a matter of fact, I think it's Electrify America who made a deal with Tesla to use their batteries to decrease those rates. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. And I'm not sure how many stations they did it, kind of like a pilot program. I think they did 15 or 20 of their locations where they're powering them with Tesla power packs, and for on-site energy storage. And that's really just to shave the demand charges that the sites are going to have, which is actually incredible. I mean, I own a piece of property in Montclair, New Jersey, and I have a DC fast charger there and a level 2 charger. And it's only a 24 kilowatt DC fast charger. It's kind of like an inner city one, not a super high speed one, but it gets a lot of use. And my summer demand charges right now are ridiculous. Year round, I pay like $5 a kilowatt for demand charges, but in the summer, they add on top of it $10 a kilowatt. So I have a max draw on my property of around 30 kilowatts because I have the 24 kilowatt charger and then a 6 kilowatt level 2 charger. So if any time during the month a person plugs into, two people plug into both stations at the same time, then I hit my 30 kilowatt maximum. So I'll pay $300 for the summer demand charge because it's $10 a kilowatt, and about $150 for the annual demand charge. So my electric bill starts off at $450 before I pay a penny for the delivery or the electric. So it actually means that I'm paying over $1 a kilowatt hour to charge people's cars, and I'm charging them like 30 cents a kilowatt hour. So I lose money every time someone uses my chargers, but I do it to provide a service for the people in the area that need to plug in.
Granted, I always said that the best feature of a Tesla, up until very recently, was their supercharging network, and I think that still might be the case. But okay, so let's get more of a real advice to our viewers, right? So let's say someone who's watching us right now is thinking about buying either another Tesla or just basically an electric car, and they are concerned with being able to go wherever they want to go in the United States. I think that we can also project it to Europe, because I think it's a very similar situation going on. Now, we've mentioned that the Electrify America is going to have a pretty decent coverage by the end of the year. Nothing like Tesla, but pretty decent, all of the major routes. Even though Electrify America charges more, it is only a problem if you're just going to rely on it every day. And thirdly, there are some problems that Electrify America has and EVgo might has. It's a bit of a hassle, though they have been improving it, and they promised that next year you will be able to have the digital handshake. They already released an app. They've figured out their pricing now. With all of this that we just went over, would you recommend somebody to consider a CCS compatible electric car like Kia Niro EV or Audi e-tron? Or would you say, hey, listen, in the next 3 or 4 years, if you're traveling long distance relatively often, you got to stick with Tesla? What's your verdict here?
So, I wouldn't want to discourage anybody from getting a CCS compatible EV. I've been driving them for years now and I love them. But it really depends on how often you need to drive far. Quite honestly, where we are today, Tesla has unparalleled convenience with their supercharger network. It's not even close. If once a month or once every 2 months you need to drive 300 or 400 miles, or 400 or 500 miles, then I think you could find your way around with CCS. It's just going to be a little bit less convenient. But if you're the type of person where every week you need to drive somewhere that's hundreds of miles away, I think we're not quite at the point yet where the CCS networks make it convenient enough to do that. Even with a car like an Audi e-tron that can go 200 miles per charge, I just don't think we're there yet. I think we're going to get there. I think we're going to get there soon. I think within the next 2 years we're going to be really close to being, as far as location-wise, close to where Tesla is. Now, whether they'll have ironed out all of the technical difficulties and have the new plug-in charge working, where that's basically a technology that's going to be just like Tesla, where the charging station is going to identify the car. You won't need to swipe a card, a credit card, a network card, an RFID card, nothing like that. You'll just plug the car in, it'll know who you are, and it'll charge you. That's starting this year. So I'm thinking, within the next year or two, that's going to be hopefully working well in most of the stations. And then you just have to get the manufacturers to include it in the cars. Some of them are already working on that technology, not all of them, but if the charging stations are there, I'd imagine that the companies that make the cars are going to make sure that they have the technology built into the cars. So basically, that's a long answer for what you asked. I'll drill down to it. If you need to drive a lot of long distance trips today, Tesla is really the only way to go. If you're not going to need to do that for another year and a half, then you might be able to hold off and get a CCS car. But as of today, it's Tesla still the king of long distance DC fast charging, and there's nothing that's really even close yet.
Okay, I gotta say, I thought we would disagree on this more. I fully agree. If it's your daily or even weekly need, then just the charges, even if it's operating perfectly, just the charges will eat up into your budget. And obviously, with all the technical difficulties, it just adds up to too much trouble. But if you only need one or two or three trips a year, I think it's a pretty equal. Sort of opportunity there too, where other things you should be considering other things in those two different types of cars. So all right, well, don't forget to tell my audience where they can find you and read your stuff.
Sure. So I write for Inside EVs. I'm posting there a couple times a week, and you could also find me on Twitter at Tom Moloughney.
All right, and I love following you on Twitter because you actually post some of the interesting, not only links to your articles, but also some interesting information, and then even once in a while you're getting a bit of a, little Twitter war with Toyota and other
I
automakers
get in
and so on.
trouble every now and then.
Yeah. So it's fun. If you guys haven't followed Tom, go ahead and follow him. It's right underneath his name. It's also in the description of this video. Tom, thanks so much. I'm looking forward to the next week of doing this with you once again.
Okay, Alex. Great to be here again. See you next week.
See you, man. All right, guys. So, well, I gotta tell you, this is where we're at. It is, if anything, it's exciting. Before that, this wasn't even a conversation. Tesla was absolutely the only choice, and even if you don't travel that often, this would be an advantage no matter what. With Electrify America coming up, with all of this trouble and and issues, they are fixing them, just like Tom says, and I expect that sometime next year, not only they'll have enough locations, the ease of use is going to be very similar. They do have an app going on. There are different plans. You can be a member. You don't have to be a member. So it is definitely getting there. Just like I said, I know we haven't talked about Europe, but it's a very similar situation with Ionity being the fast charging network there as well. And that one is invested by Volkswagen Group, Daimler, the parent company of Mercedes, BMW, and Ford, out of all companies. Though now with them investing into Rivian, it now makes more sense. So I'm definitely excited about that. So now don't forget to participate in our program, Feed a YouTuber. Just for $5 a month, this guy can get shelter, water, and video equipment, and maybe even press passes to some of the events. You go to patreon.com/E4Electric. But also you get to watch a lot of these videos live. And of course, if you don't have $5 a month, who knows? Maybe you spend it all on Electrify America chargers. We still have something for free for you in the description of this video, besides the free reservations for Byton, and that's our VIP list. You get the free bonus story every weekend. We're working on one right now, so if you sign up right now, it will get to you tomorrow. Go to e4electric.com/VIP. Of course, you can find Tom and read his articles. That link is also in the description of this video, and you absolutely should do that. All right, looking forward to your comments. Other than that, see you next time, and remember to stay charged.